Okay guys, here are your notes for this week. This is talking about ancient Rome, and we're going to talk about the fall of the western part of the Roman Empire. So here are some important dates for this week. If you remember, we are talking about the Roman Empire, and so the empire began when Augustus took over from the Republican time, and he rules Rome from 27 BCE until 14 CE. And during this time, you have the birth of Jesus connected to the religion Christianity that I mentioned in my video for this week. And 1 CE, we have the Romans start counting time. So now we're changing from before Common Era to Common Era. About 30 CE, we have the death of Jesus, and this is the start of the religion of Christianity. In 70 CE, the Romans crush a Jewish revolt and destroy the Jewish temple. This is also connected to the video I talked about with the religion of Judaism. In 180 CE, we have the end of what's called Pax Romana, or the Roman peace, and this is when the Roman Empire starts to decline at this time. We have the rule of the Emperor Constantine, who tries to bring the empire back and succeeds for a bit, but then eventually his reforms will stop and Rome will fall apart after his rule. 395 is when the Roman Empire is actually divided into two halves, an east half and a west half. And then in 476, the western part is overthrown by Germanic invaders. So let's talk about Augustus. Augustus, going back from last week, won the Roman Civil War against Mark Antony. Augustus was the nephew of Julius Caesar, and he becomes the first Roman emperor. And he does a great job for Rome's people. He rules from 27 BC until 14 CE, so about 40 years. And he makes a lot of really important reforms or changes to Rome that improve life for the people. He hires a professional army of 150,000 soldiers, and he uses this army to protect Rome's borders and end civil wars. He builds lots of public buildings like temples and baths, theaters and aqueducts to make life better for Rome's citizens. He improves Rome's laws and fixes a dishonest taxing system, and he puts his face all over Rome to show he's in charge. He prints coins, makes statues, and he unifies Rome after this time of civil war. Augustus quoted himself in bragging that he found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble, meaning that he built so many marble and expensive buildings that he made Rome better for its people after he died. During Augustus' rule, we have the life of Jesus and the rise of Christianity as a religion. I talked about this during my video, the introduction video, so I'm not going to go over it in too much detail, but for those who didn't watch it, Jesus is a poor man who lived in a part of Rome's empire called Judea. Judea is where the country of Israel is today. He was a poor carpenter who became a homeless preacher, and Jesus wandered through Judea with his followers and preached love, peace, and justice for the poor. He taught that the poor were more important than the rich, and he was a follower of the Jewish religion of Judaism. Judaism, like I talked about in my video, is a major religion that's around today, and their followers believe in only one God, and they obey God's laws. The Romans, however, were not too happy with Jesus. In about 30 CE, they crucified him, meaning which you nail someone to a cross to execute them. Because his teachings had inspired a riot in the Jewish temple against the rich people, and they didn't think that this was a good idea for them to let people rebel. So after his death, Jesus' followers spread his teachings across the Roman Empire, and they claimed that Jesus was called the Christ, or the Son of God. And they formed a new religion called Christianity that talked more about how his teachings were actually inspired by the God of Judaism, and they should be spread to everyone across the world. This is where Christianity comes from. So, Pax Romana is this time called the Roman peace in Latin. And it lasts for over 200 years. And this time is pretty awesome to be a citizen of Rome. The emperors who reigned during this time are mostly called the good emperors because they kept Rome safe and improved life for its citizens. So Pax Romana means Roman peace. And there were a few minor uprisings like the Jewish revolt I mentioned earlier that ended the Jews living in Israel. But there were no major civil wars like we had for the years before this. Emperor Vespasian built the Colosseum. Emperor Trajan built the Pantheon, which are two awesome buildings that are still around in Rome today. Roman emperors made better laws. They increased citizenship during this time so that more people could be citizens. They increased education for Rome's children. They kept trade routes along Roman roads and across the Mediterranean Sea safe from pirates and bandits. There were new developments in science and medicine. They began counting time, so we have the BC-CE division. So for the most part, life is pretty awesome during this time. It was bad for Christians, and the Roman emperors did not like this new religion that preached the poor were better than the rich, and so they persecuted Christians, in some case executing them. And during this time, you see the fish symbol, which you might recognize from different people's cars today, was a secret symbol of Rome's Christians. Today, people use it to say they're a part of that religion as well. So that's where that comes from. But Pax Romana, great time to be a Roman citizen unless you're poor or a Christian. During the Pax Romana, Rome gets to be as big as it would ever get. And so you can see in red, Rome ruled everything from Britannia all the way through what is now Spain, North Africa, Egypt, and all the way down to Mesopotamia, up into Turkey, and up through Germany. And Rome used natural borders to help defend it. So you see this kind of curve here. This is the Danube River. And so they used the Danube River to mark where their territory was, and this helped them defend things. Over here you have the Euphrates River, which they used to mark their territory there. And beneath this Roman part of Africa was the Sahara Desert. So they used natural borders to help defend themselves. When they couldn't use natural borders, they built walls. So right here, there's actually a wall that's still standing today called Hadrian's Wall that split England from what was now Scotland. They built things like the Colosseum, where they had gladiator fights and chariot races. The Pantheon was a temple to the Roman gods and goddesses, and they built these domed structures. In the Pantheon, and the inside, the sunlight comes through the roof and reflects in different ways during the day. So accomplishments of Roman engineering. Now, after 180 CE, Rome enters into a long period of decline. And the death of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius is the end of Pax Romana and the start of Rome's decline. Marcus Aurelius was the last good emperor, and after he dies, Rome has a period of kind of chaos where there are 22 emperors in 50 years. So they're changing who's in charge almost every other year. And these are not peaceful changes, they are civil wars. So one general claims he's the emperor and fights another general, and they get into battle, and one gets killed and a new one takes over. And so Rome's armies are fighting one another, and this leads to bad economy for the people who are getting poorer. And it also lets people start invading from outside of Rome because the Roman soldiers are busy fighting themselves. So you have invasions of tribes like the Goths or the Vandals or the Anglos and Saxons and the Jutes and the Huns will start coming and attacking Rome from the outside, and that makes Rome weak as well. One emperor who did try to restore Rome's greatness was Constantine. So during his time, Rome almost escapes their decline. Constantine ruled for a long time, from 272 to 337 CE, and he ended civil wars and reconquered Rome's empire. So Constantine started out ruling this part of, which is Britain, Gaul, and Spain, and he expanded to reconquer a lot of Rome's empire, not from other tribes, but from different Romans. So defeating other generals who had divided up Rome, and he reunified the empire. He legalized Christianity and ended the persecution of Christians with what's called the Edict of Milan. And his most important thing that he did was he moved the capital from the city of Rome to a new city that used to be called Byzantium. It was a small town, but he built a new capital and named it after himself, Constantinople. And this is still a city today, but the name has been changed to Istanbul. And this city was important for trade because it controlled the access from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. And so he thought by moving the capital to this important area, he would make Rome richer. And as we'll see, this would have a positive effect for half of Rome's empire and a bad effect for the other half. Because after Constantine died, later emperors ended up splitting Rome into two halves. So Emperor Theodosius divided Rome's empire into two parts because he believed that it was too big for one man to rule. He divided it into two halves in 395, and this did not help Rome because these two halves were not equal. The eastern half, whose capital was Constantinople, was richer, and the people spoke the language of Greek mostly there. You can see that Greece and Athens were a part of this empire, as well as Egypt and part of the Middle East and Turkey. And this empire was super wealthy from trade, and also from Egypt was a really good place to grow crops. And so they were wealthy, and they were doing pretty well. The Western Empire, they were more affected by the invasions from the German tribes, and they were poorer. The people there still spoke Latin and kept their capital at Rome, but they're going to be the poorer half, and they're the ones that are going to fall apart first. So the decline of the Western Roman Empire happened because of barbarian invasions. And barbarian was a Roman term for people that didn't speak Latin. It's kind of like a derogatory word, and the Romans used it because they thought that people who didn't speak Latin, their language sounded like bar, 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 bar. So they called them barbarians. But it refers to the Germans and the Asian people that invaded the Roman Empire and attacked them. So we have three different major invasions that took place in the 300s and 400s. The Visigoths are a tribe who invaded the Western Roman Empire in about 410. They actually captured the city of Rome and took it before the armies reconquered Rome and defeated the Visigoths. Next you had the Huns, and the Huns were an Asian tribe that came from like the area around kind of Russia and Mongolia, and they invaded into Rome under their leader Attila the Hun. No one knows what he looks like, but here's a famous painting of him. He won many battles against the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire, and attacked and conquered most of modern-day France, but he could not capture Rome himself before he died. The Vandals were another Germanic tribe who sacked Rome, which means like looted it and attacked it, in 455. And Rome had been made weak by the invasion of Attila 4 years earlier, and so they were not ready to defend against the Vandals. The English word today, vandalism, which means destroying things, comes from the name of this tribe because they destroyed the city of Rome so bad. The Western Roman Empire couldn't withstand any more invasions, and in 476, one final invasion by a Germanic king named King Odoacer ended the Western Roman Empire, and it was divided up into several kingdoms ruled by different Germanic tribes. So as you can see in 476, the Western Empire, which is all this stuff, is dissolved, and it's split up into many kingdoms. You have the kingdom of the Visigoths, the Vandals, Odoacer, and then many other smaller tribes. The Eastern Empire is still around, and they will last for about 1,000 more years because they were wealthy and they could afford to fight off the invaders and protect their people. So even though the Western Empire fell apart, Rome's legacy lasted for a long time. The city didn't go anywhere. You can go to Rome today and it's still a great city with lots of buildings that were built during the Roman times, like the Colosseum or the Pantheon. The idea of citizenship and republican government is still influential throughout the world today. Remember that our country has a republic. The religion of Christianity was widespread throughout Rome, as we saw, and it became the official religion of the empire before it crashed. The Catholic Church is still based in Rome, and Pope Francis, who is the current leader, still lives in the Vatican City, which is a part of Rome. Roman engineering and science, math and medicine, those developments influenced a lot of Europe, and their Roman language of Latin became the languages of Spanish, French, Italian, and Portuguese. Those languages all go back to Latin. And the Eastern Empire lasts for another 1,000 years and doesn't fall apart until 1453, Common Era. We'll talk about them more next week. Here's your video for this week. Have a great one. Talk to you guys later.